What I do like is what I know about Washington, and that is that people are policy. If you say to me, well, what is the policy of the Trump administration? Well, who are the people? And if we go down the list categorically, these are pro Bitcoiners.
Today, I sit down with political insider, institutional investor, and former White House communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, as he shares his forecast for cryptocurrency under the new Trump administration.
I think in the first 100 days, Trump is going to want to tell people, you're okay with your Bitcoin. I'm protecting your Bitcoin.
How low could Bitcoin go in the short term?
So that's another reason why I think there's a sturdy floor to Bitcoin in the
altcoins with the most potential in the long term.
Solana, my price target is 2,500.
And best crypto investing strategy in 2025.
Where I have really screwed up in my career.
Click the like button right now to support me, and let's start.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for having me on. I love you guys.
Anthony Scaramucci, man, thank you for being on. I just want to start by setting the table for cryptocurrency. What's your general forecast for crypto in 2025?
Well, listen, we've had an awesome move. I mean, who's kidding who? I probably owe Donald Trump a Christmas gift. Like, him and I don't talk anymore, so I didn't give him one. But, he came in July. You were there. I was there. He gave a speech about crypto. He was a little funny and flippant at the end. I don't even remember the speech, but he said, go have fun with your Bitcoin or something like that, And he's not, in my mind, knowing the family for 3 decades, he's not the Bitcoiner in that family. And so the Bitcoiner in that family, the real disciple, the fully orange pilled person, Trump is painted orange, but Eric Trump is orange on the inside. Okay. He is a full on, he's almost like a Bitcoin maximalist. You and I have other coins. That's why you're called altcoin, but he sees it. And I got the chance to see Eric's speech in Abu Dhabi at the Bitcoin conference in MENA. And, he sees the opportunity, the long-term opportunity. So I can't predict Bitcoin markets near term. I made a very silly mistake a few years ago, Austin, where I said, okay, if Bitcoin's 69,000 and the futures just got approved, it's November of 2021. Well, then, knowing what I know about administrative law, the cash or spot ETF for Bitcoin will be approved in February of 2022. And I got that wrong because of the arbitrary, capricious nature of Gary Gensler and the menacing nature of their anti-crypto stance for no reason. It cost them the House. It cost them the Senate. Cost them the American presidency. The Democrats got destroyed. And even their own consultants and political analysts now say, what value was it to be so anti-crypto? What vote did we gain? What electoral vote did we gain? The answer is no votes. In fact, you knocked Sherrod Brown, who was a 3-term veteran, chair of the Senate Banking Committee. You knocked him back into Ohio with your silliness and your nonsense. So when I make predictions now, I'm always thinking about those rock slides that happened to me in 2021. But what I do like is what I know about Washington, and that is that people are policy. If you say to me, well, what is the policy of the Trump administration? Well, who are the people? And if we go down the list categorically, these are pro Bitcoiners. Howard Lutnick at Commerce, Scott Bessent. Scott gave a beautiful interview before he was named or nominated to be the Secretary of the Treasury about Gensler. And he was very honest about it. He said, these guys were tight with Sam Bankman-Fried. They were tight with Sam Bankman-Fried's parents. Sam Bankman-Fried blew up. And in order to shield themselves from a potential attack due to their closeness, they went super hard indiscriminately at an industry for personal political reasons to eclipse the news stories around them being so close to the Bankman-Frieds. And I said, wow, Scott really gets it. I mean, he really understands where we are. So when you step back and you look at it and you look at Paul Atkins at SEC and Trump himself, I think there's going to be 3 or 4 big things that happen. And I think there'll be 3 or 4 pieces of legislation that happen. And I'm not going to say that Bitcoin is going to go straight up in 2025, but could Bitcoin have a $200,000 handle by the end of the year? Yes. Could we have a stop at 70 on the way there? Certainly, because it's just the way the nature of Bitcoin and the volatility of Bitcoin, and still the lack of understanding. I have a buddy of mine, he's my age. His name is Cliff Asness. He just put out a research report. He's running billions of dollars. And he said, this is a research report from 2035. And Bitcoin is at $10,000. It peaked at 250. It's now $10,000. And all Bitcoin is financial blather and computers turned on 24/7. It has absolutely no value, but there's still cultish stalwarts that are in Bitcoin. Okay, so a guy like him, as smart as he is to say that, tells me three things. Number one, he hasn't studied Bitcoin. Number two, he has no real uh, understanding for that network. He has no real understanding for the advancement of that network. And then the last piece is he missed it. Okay, and sometimes when people miss things, they dig in rather than flip over and say, "Hey, you know what? Bitcoin's really going from 100 to 200,000. I got to own some Bitcoin." You miss something, you get emotionally charged, and you get defiant. You start pissing into the wind, if you will. But what these guys miss, I just want to finish on this point, and I want you to think about this because what year were you born, Austin?
1990.
1990. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to your eighth birthday, and chances are in your house somewhere there was a fat box computer. Chances are your mom had a disk, a CD-ROM from America Online, and she put it into that computer to get an AOL account, and you would download that server search engine, if you will, and you either got to the internet through Netscape, Internet Explorer from Microsoft, something like that, Alta Vista. And the internet in 1998 was very, very clunky. It was new. There was a bookseller called Amazon. He was selling books on that internet. And what if I came to you from 2025, 27 years later, and I beamed into that living room that you were living in? I talked to you and your brother and your mom, and I said, guess what? This clunky nonsense known as the internet, we're going to stream. Billions of people are going to stream 4K video over this clunky thing known as the internet. Your download speeds are going to be instantaneous over this clunky thing known as the internet. We're going to have Wi-Fi everywhere. There'll be handheld instruments that are personal computers in your hand where you'll have access to the Library of Congress and all of the world's information at your fingertips. And oh, by the way, there'll be trillions of dollars of commerce. And that bookseller, that bookseller is going to be a $3 trillion company because it's not just going to sell books, it's going to sell A to Z, it's going to sell everything. And so what we sometimes do is we see something today, and I would make the argument that Bitcoin is in its immaturity. You say, well, how could it be in its immaturity? It went from a 0 cents or 0.1 cents to $90,000 or $100,000. How is it immature? It's immature because it's only saturated by about 5 or 6%. We're in the 90s. We're in the 1998, 1999 period of time in a comparison. And so what happens to these things is they get exponentially better as they get adapted. The speeds, the transferability, you've got something, you've got a piece of software and a network that's going to allow us to transfer value for goods and services in a permissionless way. And yet you've got people that are my age that are railing on it still, don't understand it because they haven't done the homework on it. So that's what's going to cause a lot more of this volatility as we ascend upward.
As a guy who's been on the inside of US politics, what impact do you think David Sachs could have on cryptocurrency as well as Paul Atkins?
Well, Paul Atkins has more of a frontline impact. So Paul Atkins can review the cases that, in my mind, were erroneously prosecuted, and he could withdraw those cases or restyle those cases. Paul Atkins has the opportunity to do what the SEC should do rather than have regulation by enforcement. Paul Atkins can say, okay, I've talked to people on this staff, I've talked to the industry, I've talked to members of the Congress and their staff, and I've synthesized these rules. Here are the rules, and here is the roadmap that I would like the cryptocurrency industry to follow. And of course, the cryptocurrency industry would have a chance to review that roadmap and say, yes, and this is an agreement with everybody. How do we ferret out criminals? How do we ferret out fraudsters? How do we make it fair and safe for people? And then bring that to the Congress and ask the Congress to vote on it and put it into law and ask the president to sign it. So he has this piece right there. Sachs is in a different position. I see Sachs as a offensive coordinator. Okay, I see Atkins more as a quarterback. He can execute the plays. He's on the field. But I see Sachs, he's up in the tower. He's overseeing the field. And I see David in a uh, advisory role, a coaching role. I see David seeing 5 or 6 things hit the desk of the president, helping the president figure out which of those things is the most important for the industry. I see Sachs because he's a technologist, he's a big owner of Solana, by the way. And I see him as somebody that understands the process of real world asset tokenization and how important it would be for the United States to lead that. And so he can have a big impact, but those are 2 different jobs, Austin, from a governmental perspective. One is frontline, throwing the ball down the field to get it in the red zone. The other one is, okay, here are the plays, here's the priorities, here's what I'm going to bring to the president's desk to make it his priority to push the agenda.
Anthony, how's 2025 not possibly the last great cryptocurrency bull run, just in terms of impact, in terms of onboarding? I know you just wrote a book on Bitcoin, but just looking at 25 in general.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Government, rate cuts, regulation, acceptance. It seems the dominoes have fell in favor of Bitcoin.
Well, here's what I would say. I think it's the great wave of this cycle. So what I mean by that, if these bull runs are on 4-year cycles and then they have sort of a corrective year, if you will, before they start another bull run, it's a great wave of this cycle, but it's not the last wave. Because if you're 6-7% saturated, you could easily see lots of big waves. There's a reason that Bitcoin should get to $800,000-$900,000 a coin, and the answer to that is gold. If you believe, which I believe, that Bitcoin is a form of digital gold, it is a store of value like gold. It also could be through stacks and the Lightning Network, a transferable unit of value between all of us. There's no reason why it couldn't trade to the market capitalization of gold. And by the way, it's 0.1% of global assets today as a percentage of assets. So if it gets there, it's like 1.5% of assets. I mean, it's nondescript. Gold has an important function in our society, Austin, but it doesn't run the society. It doesn't move the markets. Okay. You're centered on Bitcoin. I'm centered on Bitcoin because we're in the industry, but it's nascent and it's very small relative to the overall market capitalization of the world. So to me, yes, I think this could be a very big bullish year. I think you probably could get a correction as you go into another halving cycle, but I think there's a big run up. I think the run up starts again. Maybe we go to 250, maybe we correct back to 150, and then we're on our way to 500 or 800,000. You tell me though, because the government is a big beast. The government controls a lot of capital and can incentivize capital. If you say to me, hey, it's January 20th and Donald Trump has signed an executive order through the Dollar Stabilization Act to mandate that the 200,000 tokens, 200,000 coins that are on the balance sheet of the U.S. stays on the balance sheet, and there's a mandate for the Treasury to buy another 300,000 tokens over the next 3 years, you're going to push the price up of Bitcoin, and you're going to cause a daisy chain reaction. That'll cause our economic competitors around the world, our economic allies around the world, to start buying Bitcoin as well. So I'm assuming that doesn't happen. Could happen, but if it doesn't happen, I think you get naturally to a $250,000 rise from here over the next 12 to 24 months.
I saw a clip of you on Bankless, and you were saying you do think the strategic Bitcoin reserve will get passed, specifically
Mhm.
in the Senate. They have the votes from Republicans and Democrats. Could you walk through exactly how that happens and when?
Yeah. So again, it's a prediction. Okay. And what I love about X is that it's become more of a right-leaning social media platform. I'm a centrist, so I tell people the truth what I think about different politicians. So I get lit up left and right. So I just want to be very clear on this podcast. This is a prediction based on my conversations with people like Senator Loomis, who's making this proposal, Tim Scott, who's now going to be the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, uh, Republicans and Democrats that are younger than me. I'm talking about if you're in your 40s and your 50s or younger, you're a Bitcoiner or you're a digital asset person. I do find, particularly for Democrats, if you're 70 or above, Elizabeth Warren, i.e., you're anti-crypto for whatever reason. You're just too old to really understand it, or you're not willing to teach yourself new tricks. So, so I believe that there is a big enough group of people, and I believe a combination of legislation and executive action gets you some Bitcoin exposure on the balance sheet of the US government beyond what we already have. And so, is it what Loomis wants? A million coins bought over 3 to 5 years? I don't know. I mean, 200,000 coins a year sounds like a lot. I don't know. At the time that she made that proposal, Bitcoin was at 75,000. You're like, okay, for 75, $80 billion, you can buy a million coins. But it doesn't work like that. You know, it doesn't work like that. If they make an announcement and they legislate that, that coin's going to pop, and they may or may not get there. And there may be a regime change for Republicans to Democrats that could slow it down. I don't know. But I do think it's going to happen. And I do think it's going to happen not to the scale that Loomis is saying, but I do think it could happen to we're at 200 and we could get ourselves to 500.
Do you think that happens in the first month, or that's the first 2 year thing, or what?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's inside of the congressional term of 2 years. I think in the first month, you get some executive action from Trump. And I think in the first month, you get some SEC clarity. Okay. I think in the first 100 days, Trump is going to want to tell people, you're okay with your Bitcoin. I'm protecting your Bitcoin. And I'm also not going to impose a digital dollar on my watch. I'll do everything I can to stop that so that this libertarian idea that's represented by these assets stays in place. Those are the things. But listen, I try to be as no one's objective. I'm not saying I'm objective. I'm a subjective person, but at least I'm a straight shooter. Those are things I like about Trump. In July of 2024, the Winklevosses gave me a pat on the back. I was on a stage with Dan Moorhead from Pantera, Gary Cardone. I said, "Listen, you've got to
Aaron was there
applaud."
too.
Yeah, yeah,
I remember.
I said you have to applaud Donald Trump for embracing this asset. You have to applaud him for having the instincts to understand that this is an asset that we need the United States to think about. In order to maintain its mantle of financial services leadership, we need a president, we need an SEC, we need a Congress to help foment and grow this industry. And so there's things about Trump I dislike, but that's not one of them. I applaud him for that. And I'm surprised, actually, and I will be forever surprised by this for that matter, that the Democrats didn't reverse course after he moved in that direction, because it was a zero-sum game for them at that point. You know, if you looked at a game theory model, Trump is pro-crypto and so are the Republicans. They're gaining votes from that. You're anti-crypto, you're not gaining one vote from that. If anything, you're losing votes to the Republicans. You could have equalized that by saying, hey, my name is Kamala Harris and I am from Silicon Valley and I am pro crypto and I disagree with Elizabeth Warren's and my party. But she didn't do that. It cost her the election. I absolutely believe they lost the House, they lost the Senate. There are 50 million Bitcoin or altcoin wallets in this country. And a lot of those people are single issue voters. And it was a big FU to the Democrats.
You said Bitcoin dips happen in bull markets all the time. Bitcoin could dip as low as $70,000, and that would not invalidate the trend. What if you're wrong? What could cause Bitcoin to dip below 70, and say you were wrong in the short term?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of things. Trump could, he's a capricious guy. He could reverse course for some reason or be motivated or incentivized for some reason to reverse course. That would hurt Bitcoin. If you told me that there was something 15 years that hasn't been hacked, I'm not worried about the quantum computing stuff. I mean, Saylor's smarter than I on that issue, but I think and even, Jensen from NVIDIA came out and said, if you're worried about quantum computing, it's 15 to 30 years away. There'll be lots of defenses that will be built up prior to that. But, there could be something that I'm missing. What I hate about markets and I hate about life, it's not the things you worry about, Austin. Okay. It's the things that you don't worry about. Okay. It's the things that you think with absolute certainty. Somebody said to me, "What are you worried about, Anthony?" I said, "You know what I'm worried about? I can't find anything to worry about. So I'm worried. I'm worried that I'm missing something in the equation. But there are things that could happen. But I don't think it derails it. And I don't think, listen, I mean, Bitcoin went to 50 and there was a flash at 12,000 during the FTX crisis. I don't know if you remember that. It was in Asia overnight. So it flashed down to 12,000. It popped back up to 17. I think the bankruptcy priced those coins at 16 or 17,000. We're now in the 90s, but I don't think we're even anywhere close to fair value. And I'll make a point here on this podcast that prices you're seeing today should have been 2022 prices, meaning had Gensler just followed the rules, right? He lost the lawsuit. The judge said you didn't follow the rules. You approved one, the other thing's virtually identical to it. You didn't approve the other. You're just doing that to be unnecessarily harmful to the industry. But if he had approved one and approved the other, the prices you're seeing today would have been 2022 prices. So he delayed the market's appreciation. So that's another reason why I think there's a sturdy floor to Bitcoin in the 70s. And again, you've got guys like Saylor. I mean, my God, if you told Mike right now he could buy Bitcoin in the 70s, he's going to do everything he can to buy billions of dollars of Bitcoin in the 70s. You've got sovereigns now buying. You've got governments around the world buying, pension funds around the world buying. You've got these big mutual fund behemoths taking in the fastest growing ETF in the world, Austin. And there's 11 or 12 behemoth Bitcoin ETFs now that have their talented salespeople out in the marketplace pitching the idea of owning 1, 2, 3, 4% positions in Bitcoin. So if it's going to go below 70, maybe you'll send some money to my GoFundMe account, to my therapy. I'll probably start up a GoFundMe account. I don't see it, but I've been humbled by life. I've been humbled by markets. And so, now that I've just made that declaration, it'll trade to 51,000 or something like that. And people say, see, he got it wrong. But I just think there's just too much fundamental demand and relative short supply to have that happen right now.
Michael Saylor wrote the foreword to your new book. There's a link down below. I know a lot of people are loving it. What is your new book and who's it for?
So my new book is The Little Book of Bitcoin. It's written for John Wiley. They have a 40-book series, The Little Book of Value Investing, Little Book of How to Beat the Market, Little Book of Hedge Funds, one I wrote. This is the second one I've written for that series, The Little Book of Bitcoin. And it's a book about what Wall Street already knows that you need to know. And that this is a store of value. This is an asset that will be with us. This is a forever asset now. And I write a personal story of my odyssey towards Bitcoin. Michael's interviewed for the book. Wences is interviewed for the book. Pete Brigger, I think you may know Pete from Fortress. He owns a lot of Bitcoin. He's interviewed for the book. And it is, okay, this is how I got to Bitcoin. And people may know this from Michael's story. Michael was negative on Bitcoin. Michael said that this would be a failure. He said it would be a failure like online gambling. And now he teases and said, well, online gambling finally made it, but it was failing in 2012, 13. And he was derisive about Bitcoin. And I was negative on Bitcoin. And again, why was I negative? Like the Cliff Asness of today, the 2025 zone, I didn't do the homework. I didn't understand it. And Michael got there before me. And again, I say this all the time when I talk at colleges, other podcasts. I say, hey, if you do the homework, if there's 100 people that did the homework, 99 of them are pro Bitcoin. Yes, there's always going to be one curmudgeon that's anti Bitcoin. I got it. And he will have said that he did the homework. But 99% of the people that do the homework, Max Kaiser said something really funny to me in Abu Dhabi. He's never met a person that did the homework that was negative on Bitcoin. So to me, the book is about here's the homework. Here's where I started. Here's what I read. Here are the people I interviewed. Here's the people I talked to. Here's my understanding of the network and the ledger. Here's my understanding of the benefits to the society, right? And I want people to know that. And then I have in the back of the book, I say where they could learn more. Saylor, can I tell this quick story because it's enjoyable? It'll take a minute.
Please.
Saylor reads the book. He's on his boat in the Mediterranean over the summer, and he schedules a call with me. And I come in. I can hear the satellite chirping as he's coming into me. And he's like, I just got to ask you. I loved your book. I learned so much in the book about these different stories of, these are friends of mine, and I didn't know that story about this guy or that guy. He said, but you finished the book terribly. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, the last chapter of the book, you're recommending a 2% position in Bitcoin. Let me ask you something. You spent 12 chapters telling me that this is the best investment idea of your 36-year history on Wall Street. I said, yes, Michael. He said, so do you have 49 other good ideas like this? I mean, because if it's the best idea, don't you have to have 50 if you're going to have a 2% position in each? I said, no, I don't. Well, how much of your net worth is in Bitcoin? And I said, it was about 55%. It's a little higher now, believe it or not, because of the appreciation from the summer. And he said to me, okay, so you have 55% of your net worth in Bitcoin, and you're recommending people 2% after you just told me it was the best idea that you've come across? Change the last chapter. And I did. I don't know if you read the book, but I wrote in the last chapter of the book, here's what Michael said to me. This is what I own. This is what he owns. People recommend 1, 2, 3%. I'm not going to do that at the end of this book. I'm going to tell you what we own, and you should really think hard about it. But when you have a great idea like this, you should get concentrated in it.
So Michael Saylor gets editing credit on the book.
He
Editor.
does. He gets three. He's the Triple Crown winner of that book. He wrote the foreword. He was interviewed for the book and tells some great stories in the book, which we regale. And he yelled at me about the last chapter, and I made those changes consistent with what his ideas were about it.
Highly recommend. Link down below. In our final 10 minutes, Anthony, let's pivot off Bitcoin a little bit.
Okay.
In 2025 to 2026, besides Ethereum, what's an altcoin that you're most bullish on?
Well, listen, I think the thing about Ethereum is I think people are missing. I think if so it's just fun about our business. Austin, everybody thinks in investing, they're in the investing business or the crypto business. You're in the fashion business. Let me just explain why, okay? For 36 years, things come in and out of fashion. When I got into the industry, biotech stocks were hot. Then it flipped over to insurance stocks got hot. And then it was the world of alternative investing and hedge funds, and we go through waves and cycles of what's in and out of fashion. And so weirdly, Ethereum is like out of fashion a little bit, which I'm surprised by because it's got such great applications and it's got a muscularity to it that, and it's got dominance. And so I do believe Ethereum is a winner, and I think it's a long-term winner. But I think that Solana is cheaper and faster, and is now that network is handling lots of volume, and it's got a good cross section of different things going on Solana. And so, we're long a lot of Solana. I'll be fully disclosed and tell you that. I own Polkadot because I like what Polkadot's capable of doing in the gaming industry, and I'm still a big believer that Web3 gaming will happen. There'll be sort of a renaissance there. We can't see it right now any more than we could see when you were 8 years old and your mom was taking you to Blockbuster Video to buy a video over the, and to put it in your VHS. We couldn't see the world of the way we're streaming Wicked over the holidays, in 4K on our 85-inch screens at home, so we have to see a little bit into the future. And I think that things like Polkadot and Solana will do well. I think Avalanche will do well. I've had always, last 4 years, a position in Algorand. Algorand, I think, has great technology. I think they lost a step when they made some management changes, but there's a guy by the name of John Wood there who's the chief technology officer. He came from Cardano. I think he's a very, very smart guy, and he's putting some stuff together there. And I think that one is undervalued. So yeah, no, I'm a big believer in these things. Sui and Aptos, I'm a long-term believer in those as well. I don't think there'll be one chain, Austin. I think the reason why you're in this and you call yourself altcoin is that you know Bitcoin is the Pope, but there's a college of cardinals that will be very useful in terms of what their applications are and their networks ultimately become over the next 5 to 15 years.
What is your take profit strategy for crypto? Like whether Bitcoin tops off at 150 or 200, what are the signs you look for to sell and how do you
Yeah.
do it?
So you see, I actually think it's a weird thing. Do you sell cash? That's the question. Do you sell cash? And the answer is yes. You would sell cash to buy stock, right? You would sell cash to buy Bitcoin, or you would sell cash to buy Solana. So the question is, am I and my team, are we right that Bitcoin is cash? Is Safadeh and Amos and the Bitcoin Standard right that it is a form of, excuse me, it's a form of hard currency or cash? If it's a form of hard currency or cash, I think the market will mature around Bitcoin and there will be Bitcoin lending and there will be Bitcoin earning that is similar to the banking industry. It'll probably be a little bit more regulated than BlockFi and some of these other things that didn't go well, okay, in the debacle of 2022. But if that's the case, I'm probably not a seller of Bitcoin anytime soon. So if you tell me that Bitcoin is not cash and it's a meme coin and it's just number go up and then you've got to press a button at the right time and get out of it and let the greater fools lose all their money in Bitcoin, uh, I'm going to lose all my money in Bitcoin. Okay, because I don't believe that. Okay, I think that this is a store of value, and I think this is achieved escape velocity, and I think that the systems that are being built around Bitcoin are going to lead to that sustainability. So I'm in that binary camp. I'm not the guy to say, hey, 250 is my price target, and I'm getting out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying no. This is to me cash, and I'm always going to have some cash on my balance sheet.
I agree. I'm not selling my Bitcoin, but altcoins, I do want to take some
Altcoin,
profits.
yeah. So, listen, I agree with you on that. Look, I have price targets, but they're way higher than anything that I just mentioned. Solana, my price target is 2,500. I'm not, and again, I don't see that happening today, but I see that over 5 or 8 years. At 2,500, could I sell some Solana? Yeah. Am I staking my Solana for long-term returns? I am. Polkadot, Avalanche. Yes. Could I be sellers of those things over time if I think that those networks are fully valued and I want to diversify it into Bitcoin or other cash-like instruments? Sure, I'm open to that. But this is uh, years from now, Austin. This is not today. And by the way, I've been well served by this because you would have, if this is a video podcast and we were doing it in 2023, January, I would have been under the desk talking to you because bombs were going off in Solana, and I think we traded at $8. Okay, and we bought our Solana at like 22, and I was sitting there at $8, and people around me were panicking, and I'm not going to say that I wasn't panicking. I was feeling the pain of it all, but at least I'm now battle tested. I said, look, we're not selling it. Let it trade to zero. Now it's at 200 or wherever it is, and I think it could get to 2,500, and I want to be there for it.
Anthony, final question. For a cryptocurrency investor in 2025, best advice?
You have to get off of zero. If you're off of zero and you're listening to this podcast, you got to get off of where you are. So if you got 3% in, you got to go to 6%. If you got 6% in, you got to go to 8. You got to get off of where you are. You got to do something that I started at age 18, which is I make monthly investments into my portfolio. And so I take a piece of my money and I tell people this: pay yourself first. Open up an account somewhere, buy Bitcoin every month, buy a Solana every month, buy, if you want to buy US equities, buy them every month. Are they going to go down? Yes. If you look at US equities over 125 years, 1900 to 2025, it's down approximately 25% of the time. One out of every 4 years, you get clipped. But if you take a step back and you look at the chart, and if you had the stomach for that volatility, you did beautifully. And I think these hardcore blue chip assets like Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, Avalanche, Polkadot, Algorand to a lesser extent because it's a smaller chain, but I think they have great long-term fundamentals. And so I would just tell people where I have really screwed up in my career is selling too early, Austin. That's been my screw up. Stay patient and ride the volatility.
Anthony Scaramucci, links for you, your book down below. Thanks, man.
All right, you're the best. Thank you, brother.